Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. And today I'm going to talk about a band I've been looking forward to talking about for a very long time, and that's Agalloch, one of my favorite bands. And they formed in 1995 in Portland, Oregon. And I would consider them just a metal band. Lots of neo folk, black metal, post metal, classic metal. But more than anything, people seem to consider them an atmospheric black metal band. But outside of the scream vocals, how many black metal parts can you really pick out of their songs? If you ask me, it's not a lot. So a very singular sound and a very influential, important band. So let's just get right to the studio albums. They have 5, and I am gonna start from worst and all the way up to best. Might be an unpopular pick, but my least favorite Agalloch album is Pale Folklore, their debut album, released on the N Records in 1999. This is a more recent edition I have here. So this is 8 songs, but 1 through 3 are all She Painted Fire Across the Skyline. That's chopped up into 3 pieces here, and I think on some editions it's just one long song. I just don't think the magic was here yet. The most, probably the most black metal thing they put out. There's some female vocal parts that I'm not a fan of, not because I don't like female vocals, I just don't like operatic vocals. But even still, this is at least a 4 out of 5. And my favorite track, we're going to go with Dead Winter Days. My number 4 is Marrow of the Spirit, 2010 on Profound Lore Records. This is most Agalloch fans' least favorite release. And although Pale Folklore might be their most black metal, most fans consider this the heaviest and darkest release. It sounds like the cover, just very wintry, dark, kind of depressing for an Agalloch album. Right from the intro, just the cello. Definitely some post-rock touches on here that I think work pretty well. But it just doesn't have the heart that I find in a lot of Agalloch's music. It doesn't mean it's not good, it's the darkest and the heaviest, and one thing that I like about Agalloch is there's just a tenderness to it that really gets to me, and that's lacking on this album here. So before we move on to the number 3, I'll show you my vinyl copy of Marrow of the Spirit. This is a beautiful release. I got this just after it came out. So it's a double LP, blue black marble. And an absolutely beautiful booklet. Quite lengthy. Lyrics, pictures, all that stuff. A couple of years ago, I was looking online to see what I could get for this. And about 4 years ago, this seemed to be fetching over $400 on Discogs and whatnot. But I checked it out more recently, and it's more like $200, but even still, worth a little bit of money. Okay, number 3. Another album that people put near the bottom. Their final album, The Serpent and the Sphere, from 2014. Also on Profound Lore Records. Although, of all their albums, I have the least reference points off the top of my head. And to some extent, I don't listen to it as much as some of the other ones. I think this is definitely an underrated album. They went out on a pretty high note, if you ask me. And my favorite track on here is Plateau of the Ages. That was my favorite song from the first time I heard this album. Number 2, Ashes Against the Grain. For many years, this was my number 1 Agalloch album. Probably the most immediate. I think just the modern rock and metal fan would find this the most immediately gratifying. Their most post-rock related album. Just look at Limbs, which is again kind of a post-metal, post-rock song in the Agalloch style. And then Against the Waves, masterpiece. And my other favorite on here is definitely number 7, Bloodbirds. I bought this album kind of recently, just kind of filling in some blanks in my collection, and it was all there in the advertisement on where I get it, eBay. But I did end up with a promotional copy. Again, it was all advertised, but I just did not look close enough, and kind of disappointed with that. But what are you gonna do? If I didn't mention 2006, The End Records. So I mentioned that Ashes Against the Grain for many years was my favorite Agalloch album. And the mantle by the vast majority of fans, both hardcore and casual, have always said the mantle's the best, and I've always had a bit of a contrarian nature. I've always been like, yes, it's a great album. But time has been very kind to it. I can't deny it. The mantle is my number 1. 2002 on the End Records. I got some kind of a European edition here, Turning Grief into Music. I think I ordered from Germany or the Netherlands, because it's hard to find a new copy these days around here. In the Shadow RPL Companion, that's probably their most famous song. A great introduction to the band. But my 2 favorite pieces on here are 2 of the 3 instrumental pieces, Odal and The Lodge. They're just 2 of the most beautiful pieces of music I've heard in my life. Can almost bring me to tears if I let them. Just very beautiful music, and it'll always be a part of my life for as long as I live. So that is my ranking of my top 5 Agalloch albums. But now we're gonna go back in time and start looking at the beginning of their career. So in 1997, they released a demo called From Which of This Oak? And I don't have a copy of that, so I'm just going to discuss the songs briefly. There's a song called The Wilderness. It's close to old black metal meets classic metal. Same with the song after that, As Embers Dress the Sky. Great, not amazing songs. And then This Old Cabin, which definitely brings me vibes of old Catatonia. All 3 of these songs, they started off good but ordinary, but they highlight Agalloch's ability to always win me over by the end of the song, predominantly due to Don Anderson's guitar work. Probably one of my favorite guitar players. So I'm going to give that a 76% overall. And that material can be found on a release called The Demonstrative Archives. I don't own that, but it's basically that demo with a couple songs from Pale Folklore in demo form. And then I believe the entire of Stone, Wind, and Pillar EP is on there as well. I am going to be looking at some notes, so I'll just get that out of the way if you see me glancing away. So now we're going to look at their debut EP from 2001 of Stone, Wind, and Pillar. And my copy here is a 2021 edition on Eisenwald. So, Of Stone, Wind, and Pillar is the opener here, and it's the only real metal song on here. And it's a solid song by a very talented, ambitious young band. But as I've said, similarly to Pale Folklore, I just don't think the magic is there yet. Number 2, Foliorum Viridium, a neo-folk, neoclassical piece. Nothing special. Number 3, you have Haunting Birds, an acoustic piece. One of the standouts on here. Kneel to the Cross, which is a Soul Invictus cover. And I think it's a amazing cover. 4.5 out of 5. I guess I don't give it full marks because the intro goes on a little too long. And some of the vocal parts I don't love. And Soul Invictus, a famous neo-folk group. And I've been getting into neo-folk music lately, but Soul Invictus are of the big names of neo-folk, they're the one that I struggle the most with. It just hasn't quite captured me. But I'm still trying. They got quite a bit to explore. And then finally, a poem by Yeats, which is another classical soundtrack style piece with the vocals being a reading of a poem, I'm assuming by Yeats. So overall, I'm going to give this release a 72%. Kind of a mixed bag, but the best is yet to come. Now we're going to talk about the Grey EP. Came out in 2004. And it's basically 2 remixes or reworkings of songs from The Mantle. You have The Lodge Dismantled, which has quite a few similarities with the original. Not as good, but I'm going to give that a 4.25 out of 5. I think it's still a great piece of music. Then you have Odal Nothing Remix, which isn't very interesting, but the ghost of Odal, it still lives within the song. You still get the vibe. You still get kind of the best guitar part present within the song. So I'm going to give that like a 3 out of 5. At least on Spotify, there is a third song called Shadow Dub, and it's kind of a dub techno thing. And I tried to judge it for what it is. Not so much as an Agalloch song. And I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. It's not my thing. And I can get into that kind of music, but this song, it did nothing for me. So overall, the Grey EP, I gave it 63%. Now we're going to talk about the White EP. Came out in 2008. And I do have a nice little Agalloch collection. The White EP is the one thing I still think that I need. It's not a metal release by any means. It's more of a neo-folk project. And I'm going to give it an 80%. Again, it's almost entirely neo-folk, almost entirely instrumental. I love the opener of The Isle of Summer and The Pantheist. But the highlight is definitely So Willow, Rune. I'm not going to say it's a perfect song because I could do without the whispered vocals during it and without the Wicker Man sample at the end. But it's a completely beautiful piece of music with an amazing ending. And just, if you focus on that song, like, I just can't help but think of just vague, cloudy, but beautiful childhood memories on sunny days. It's an amazing song. So if nothing else, check out that one. Then in 2010, there was a single called Scars of the Shattered Sky. It's got an ambient opening that goes on for a while before sparse guitars kind of work their way in there. And then 14 minutes into this 18-minute song, the entire band kicks in. And once again, the guitar parts near the end save the day. And overall, I'm going to give that song a 70%. And I should mention, there's a couple other releases and singles that I'm not discussing here. I guess there's always a way on YouTube, but if I don't own it or if it wasn't on Spotify, I just skipped over it. But I think I got the main things. Okay, let's get back to a CD I have. Faustian Echoes. This was released in 2012. And it's one 21-minute song based on the Faustian legend story. And it's a top 3 Agalloch song for me. I saw them perform this song live once, but was it the entire 21, 22 minutes? That I don't remember. But I especially love the big reoccurring guitar part throughout the song. But I could also do without the spoken word samples that tie in with the story. It's well done, but that stuff just never goes over well with me. So for that reason, I'm not going to give it 100%, but 95%. It's pretty close. There'd be something in 2013 called The Wolves of Timberline, another single, and it's basically a 5-minute instrumental folk song. Nothing too interesting or too special, but I do like it. 75%. So, the band would break up after The Serpent and the Sphere. In hindsight, it appears that the band was fracturing for a while leading into it. The band turned into a little bit of a business, not just an underground band, a little bit of infighting, and then eventually the nail in the coffin was some online comments that were made. And the band did break up and went away for a while. But just a month or so ago, it was announced that they would reform to do selected live gigs. And I guess I saw that coming a bit because the band did come out of the shadows a bit to say we've had our differences, but we've reformed our friendships and we can move on from here. Are they going to do new material? No idea. But the 3 core members of the band, they all seem to be on board. Aesop, who's not the original drummer, but the drummer for the last 2 albums, I'm not sure if he is going to be a part of this. Actually, I know he's not. They have Hunter Ginn from Canvas Solaris. I believe he's going to be drumming for them. And Aesop Decker, amazing drummer, but he is not on my favorite Agalloch albums. I think the band will be fine without him. I don't think he's even into metal anymore, come to think of it. But what else? What else with Agalloch? I've seen them live 2 times. Once was with my wife, who's not into metal, and once was with a friend who is not into metal. And they both really enjoyed the show. And both times at pretty big venues, both packed. They have over 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. They've influenced 1 million bands. I forget how popular they are. Imperium were probably the only band. Maybe they were even actually a little earlier to the game when it came to the style of folk metal. But what happened after Agalloch broke up? Let's see. You had a band called Karada, which was everyone but John, the guitar player and vocalist. And they took the vocalist from Giant Squid, a band I've talked about before. And they put out an album, I think it was called Salt. And I bought that on iTunes when it came out. And it wasn't an immediately gratifying listen, but it was certainly interesting, and I thought it was a 4 out of 5. John had a group called Pelorian. They had an EP and a full length. And that was more straightforward black metal, but still had some of that Agalloch spirit in it. And I thought that was great. I thought that was preferable to Karada to me. But John also has done some solo work, and the only thing I own is this project called Mosaic. Matthias Grassow and John Hom. Definitely an ambient style release. Kind of sparse. But I did take some time over the last couple months to listen to more John Hamm solo ambient stuff, and some of it's really cool. Some of it's still heavy. You'll hear the kind of metal guitar in there. Other stuff kind of reminds me of Earth. Definitely some Western influence. I think it's some really cool stuff that's worth exploring. Don Anderson, the lead guitarist, he has a group called Sculptured that put out 3 albums, with this one being the 3rd one in 2008. This one's called Embodiment. Definitely a little bit more adventurous than Agalloch, but a cool band. And after a big break, they did put out a release a couple years ago in 2021 that I did listen to. I just can't tell you much about it. So that was it. Ranking of Agalloch, discussing some of their other material, and just some discussion about the band in general. So hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.